This is going to be a quick tutorial on what you can do with maps in the Fleet Manager application. Assuming you're used to using the table view a little more maybe, I have my table view expanded to show a number of different message board groups. And let's say I select everybody in this group. And now I can perform an update on all these guys. And these things, of course, as usual, tell me that my update is in progress, and one of them is in. And I can see what message is being displayed on these boards by clicking on the message number link here. And now if I want to get these guys on the map, there's a couple of different ways I can do it. If I press the position link here, it will show up on the map. But what's more fun is if you just say map all the ones that you have selected. So here's this is the control area, the update control box I call it. And here it's telling me two things. First of all, it's telling me that I'm using table selections for my next operations. That will make more sense in a second. It's telling me that I could use marker selections on the map, but I don't have any message board selected on the map. So it's important to notice that you have a count of selections here. The reason that's important on the map and on the list is that I could have maybe selected this guy, scrolled it off the screen, and forgotten that I did that. And then I would maybe do a broadcast, thinking that I'm about to broadcast to these two boards, but in fact I've got 3 boards selected. So always look at this selection count here as a bit of a sanity check to make sure that you've got the number of boards that you think you have. If you think you have 2 here and it tells you you have 3, this is a good time to start looking around and find out what else you have selected and say, no, I didn't mean to do that. And here I am again with 2 selections, and I can send a broadcast to these 2 boards. Now, rather than sending them a broadcast, I can just put them on the map by clicking that, and it shows me these 2 guys on the map. The map has a limited number of gestures that it can take from your mouse or your finger if you're on a tablet. So it's important to know what mode the map is in so that the gestures have some meaning. For instance, right now, if I wanted to move the map to a different area, I couldn't, because when I try to swipe across the map, I wind up selecting boards. So let's just allow it to select boards for a second. There I've selected 2 boards. Because I selected 2 boards, automatically the control area has decided for me that I'm about to do whatever I'm about to do to the selected markers. So I have 2 table selections that are no longer really active, and I have 2 marker selections, and it says that I'm going to use selected markers. And what that means now is that if I did a broadcast or an update, it would operate on these 2 boards that are selected on the map. If I unselect one of them, now it's telling me that I'm about to use selected markers. There's only 1, and if I did an update, it would happen to this board that's in the number 6 board. So it's very important to know whether you're about to perform an operation on the selected markers or on the table selections, and as you can see, they can be 2 different sets of selected boards, so pay attention to what you're doing. Looking at these numbers, by the way, if we scroll up a bit, we can see that these numbers correspond to these position links in the table. So I know that number 6, this board, is here, and number 7, this board, is here. So some correlation between the list, which gives a little bit more information, and the map, which gives you the position. Now I can perform an update on the selected markers just by saying update selected. The blinky thing shows up here as well because that board is in fact being updated, but I made the update happen based on my map selection, which means only that board gets updated. This other guy didn't get updated, even though it was selected in the table, because again I chose my selection, my update based on selected markers. Now, anytime you perform an operation on the map, the application assumes and clicks this use selected markers for you. And if I perform an operation on a table now, like clicking and checking and unchecking, then it automatically assumes that I mean to use table selections for my next update or broadcast. But you can always override that. You can make a change on the table and say, well, actually I still want to use selected markers for my next operation. So you can click either of these regardless of what the application does for you. It's just trying to help you out a bit by guessing your next move. So back to maps. we can see that we can select by drawing a square, and the fact that I just selected an empty square means that I've unselected these guys. I can select them again. And I can also move from selection to navigation by clicking that. And now, instead of describing squares for selections, I'm actually moving the map around perhaps to look for other boards. Of course, I can also zoom out to find out if there are other boards around somewhere else. And I can zoom in again. And zooming in a little more makes it a little easier to select. Oops. Makes it a little easier to select or unselect one versus the other. So what I've done now is I've selected this guy, which unselected that guy. Just like I can do from the index list, I can see my message. And here I have a menu that says new message, show, edit, destroy. I have pretty much the same options over here. I can click on the marker and I can see his IP address, and if I had named this board, then I would see the name here instead. I can do a show, edit, destroy, and I can do a show message, which brings up that thing. And I can even send a new message from here by clicking that. You wind up in the same new message form. So pretty much anything you can do from the table, you can do from the map. What I'm going to do now, so this is all true for the index list, which is a list of potentially a large number of boards, all of which can be on the map at the same time, and all of which can be broadcast to from the map. So maybe one use case for that would be if I had boards over here north of this highway, I could say, well, I want to select all the boards that are south of this highway and broadcast a message to them. Or I might select all the boards that are north of this highway, if there were any, and broadcast a different message to them. So you can actually do a broadcast based on location, which is really convenient. Now, if I go into an individual board's view, and I can do that from the map as well, so let's just do that from the map. I can say, show this board, and I wind up in my usual show board view. And in here there's only one thing I can put on the map at a time, obviously, because I'm only looking at one board. If I click the position link, there I am. One thing I can do from here, which I can't do from the index page, is describe a geofence. A geofence is basically an area that is defined for this board that when it leaves this area, it's going to send me an alert. So if a board doesn't already have a geofence, I can just click the Reset Geofence button, and it draws a default geofence of 1 mile around the present board's position. Now I can move. I'd like to move my map around so I can maybe see all the boards around it. So you can see I'm in navigate mode here, but I can also move the geofence. If I click that, now I'm just dragging this circle around. And maybe for some reason I want the geofence to be like that, so I'm allowing the boards a little more leeway northwards than southwards. So if the board moves a little bit more north, I don't care, but if it moves south, I'm going to get an alert. I can change the size of the geofence by just typing in some number here. And if you're someplace where you prefer to use kilometers, I can switch to kilometers as well. And now my geofence is set. Every time I make an operation there, the geofence is automatically set. That's all you have to do. There's no submit button for it. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but all the time when you're on the map and the index page or here, you can see your coordinates in the upper right above the map. That may be useful sometimes. Now, if you have entered your mobile phone number in your user's profile and checked the box for getting SMS alerts, you would get an SMS alert not only when the voltage on this message board went low, but also if the message board left its geofence. And a nice way to test that, which I do all the time, for a board to leave its geofence, there are two conditions. Either the board leaves its geofence or the geofence leaves the board. So if I want to test my SMS receiving capabilities, for instance, it's kind of hard to force a board to have low voltage. I suppose you could disconnect the battery. You might lose a few other things that way as well. So to test my SMSs, what I often do is I just go over here, and I move my geofence away from the board. And that's exactly the same as the board moving out of the geofence. So just now I received an SMS alert telling me that my board has left its geofence. And now I can either move it back that way, or I can press reset, and it moves back to a 1 mile radius around the board. And that's pretty much it for geofences as well. And I think that's more or less it for locations. Back up here, when I've defined the geofence, I also have a geofence center, and because I did a reset just now, the geofence center is exactly the current position. We can see that if I move the geofence a bit that way, then back up here, the geofence center has moved, but the position has not. And that's all there is to do with positioning.